I am fabulous, fabulous and happy to be here. Yasmin, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
All right. Well,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is actually one of my favorite topics to speak on. Doing business with the federal government is a tricky endeavor at best. And this opening slide kind of conveys an idea that came to me years and years ago because everybody, you get two schools of thought. The government tells you watch SAM, look for RFIs, look for RFPs, respond, blah, blah, blah. People that have actually won government contracts, though, will tell you that it's all about getting to know people so you can understand what their needs are and getting to having relationships so that people can know, like, and trust you. Because yes, you're going to have to bid, but you're also going to have to get conversations with people, get meetings with people so you can explain what you do and how what you offer helps them to solve a problem that they have. And it came to me that that's great advice. Get in front of those people, but how the heck do I do that? Because it seems like my prospects hide from me. Okay. And I don't claim to have a magic answer or a magic button you can push to get inside federal agencies, but I've been doing this for a while and kind of through the School of Hard Knocks, I've come up with this presentation that can give you some ideas on how to get started. And what I really most want to tell you and convey to you is that it's all about talking to as many people as you can and making linkages between, it could even be a neighbor, it could be a customer, it could be a teaming partner, it could be somebody that works in an agency that doesn't have anything to do with what it is that you want to provide to the agency, but who might be a bridge that can take you to that person that you do need to talk to. So that's what we're going to dig into a little bit today. Okay. Now, why does it feel in many instances like your prospects in the government are hiding from you? And there's a couple of reasons I have found. One of the things I do is I still consult. I'm a former government contracting professional, and I still at times consult with the government and with their acquisition teams on the challenges that they're facing and on regulations. So what I know from those engagements is that government employees are busy. I just heard a presentation this morning. I was at a breakfast before I hopped on this webinar with you all, and I heard from a senior leader at the Department of State that has a portfolio of 10, and he's the only person there. In that same presentation, another person that was also a senior executive said that they have about 2/3 of the procurement staff that they need, and about 50% of the IT professionals that they need to really affect the change that they need to make with respect to information technology and cybersecurity. So that leads to my first point. They're busy. They got a lot of things to do. They are measured not by how outgoing they are or how many relationships they have. They're measured by how much work they get done. So you have a desk full of work. You're going to not really want to take the time away from that to talk with people, even though doing that contributes to you potentially getting a poorer outcome than you would have gotten had you taken the time to speak with vendors to learn about how vendors can actually help you solve your problem. Now, along with that, they're busy, and at the same time they're busy, their phone is busy ringing if they even answer a phone or if they're even at their desk, and their email is constantly dinging, ding, 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 because people are trying to email them to get in touch with them, to schedule a meeting, to gather information. So they're very sought after. How do they choose who they want to talk to? Lastly, on this slide, I want to say that federal employees are risk averse. Okay. So even though it's not true, there is a widespread belief in the federal government that if I talk to one vendor, I have to talk to every vendor. Well, that's not possible, first of all. And second of all, that's definitely not true. But changing a culture is hard. And even though the government has been trying to change that culture, they haven't done a real good job at it. So here's a recent thing that I just saw this week, was helping a client respond to an RFI with the agency, and the RFI was to be submitted by email. Okay, so usually if people put their email, it's something like my email is Carla@GovConAcademy. At many government agencies, it would be like kwilliams@xyz.gov. This person put the email address for responding to the RFI as theman@xyzagency.gov. When you read further into the RFI, it said that if they deem that your response is meritorious, then you'll get the real contact information for the person that's in charge of gathering this information. So combine that with being busy, with being highly sought after, everybody wants to talk to you, as well as having a culture that is extremely risk averse. And you know why it's difficult to actually get people to know you, let alone like you, let alone trust you. Okay, so that's just a little prelude. So what can you do? Well, the first thing I teach my clients is you got to know the rules. Okay, because there are the rules, and then there are what people think the rules are. I gave you an example of that a couple of minutes ago when I said there's a pervasive belief in the government that I shouldn't talk to vendors because somehow if I talk to Joe, Mo, and Curly, but I don't speak with Larry, well, I've been unfair to Larry. Or if I only talk to Larry because I don't know about Joe, Mo, and Curly, well, then, I've been unfair. I've given Larry that advantage, which he shouldn't have. That's not what the rules say. The rules actually encourage government people to reach out and speak with industry, to do market research, to get feedback, to see what the industry has to offer that can help them to solve their challenges. That's the rule. That's not what the culture believes the rule is. So my motto dealing with the government is learn the rules as well as, and hopefully better than they know the rules. Then you can leverage those rules to help you get farther in your pursuits. Followed by learning the process. Every acquisition, no matter how large or how small, goes through a similar process, just to differing degrees. So for every acquisition that the government is making, every contract that they issue, every RFP, RFQ, IFB that gets issued goes through a process. And that process is some program office in the agency needs something and they have to find the money, and then it goes all the way through the contracting process, okay? So learn what those steps are in the process and know when you need to talk to whom in the process. We'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this session. Now, you got to do your research. Also heard this 3 times this week because I've been in front of government officials 3 times this week, and I've heard them all say, do your research. When you come to talk with me, don't just say what's happening in your agency with respect to XYZ solution or ABC product. Do your research, because when you ask them that question, that requires them to think about what are they talking about. So be specific, do your research, have specific questions, know what the agency buys, know who buys it, who uses it, who they bought it from, have specific questions. Then they're more likely to help you. They're not going to do your work for you. So you need to do your research up front. There's a ton of publicly available data that can help you figure out who to talk to about what product. It can tell you who your competition is. It can tell you all of that. So do your research, use the data. If you don't know how to use the data, take a class, spend a Saturday figuring it out. But there's tons of data sources out there, both free and paid, that can help you gather the information you need to be someone that they actually will pay attention to, because you know the process, you know the rules, you've done your research, you know what this particular agency needs. And then plan your activities. It's all about timing. It's about getting in front of the right person at the right time with the right message that will help them solve their problem and help them do better at their job and help them progress and help their agency deliver on their mission. So before you can even talk to somebody, there's a lot of work that has to go into it. Now, the challenges that you're always going to face, as I've talked about these a little bit already, is they avoid salespeople. Nobody likes to be sold. I mean, think about it. Do you like to be sold to? Most of us don't like to be sold to, okay? So that aversion of being sold to is present in the government as well, because they are people just like we are. Again, there's this thing about fairness. Somehow talking to you could be perceived as somehow being unfair to others. But we all know now, because I've told you that the rules say the exact opposite. They are supposed to talk with industry. And there's no reason for them to talk to companies, because the culture in the government isn't one that is open. It's not one that encourages relationship building. It's not one that encourages dialogue or interaction. So that's something you're always going to fight up against. So how do you get through these things? People don't care about you until they know that you can help them or that you've taken the time to care about them and what their challenges are. So that's why doing all the things of knowing the rules, understanding the agency and their process for buying things, understanding how they buy and what that process looks like, understanding the data, what they've bought in the past, what they're likely to buy in the future, and then coming up with the right message that resonates with them and that shows them that you understand their challenges and you're going to help them, and here's how you're going to help them. That takes some time. You can't just pick up the phone. You have to prepare for these calls. So again, never want you to forget this. The regulations do not prevent you from, there we go. Regulations do not prevent the buyers from talking to anybody. They don't prevent the contracting personnel from talking to anyone. They don't prevent the end users from talking to industry. No regulation precludes that. So if you don't believe me, there's a series of memos called the Mythbusters memos. If you type that into Google, I think they're on the 4th or 5th iteration of that now. And these were put out by the Office of Federal Procurement Policy because the government high up knows that they have a problem, and this problem could be solved by changing the culture so that people talk and the government talk to industry, and so that industry people can talk to the government. Now, who they talk to is another matter, okay? So we talked about the rules. That's what I just showed you here, the rules, and I showed you a place to go and verify those rules. What I've told you is true. If I can't show it to you in the FAR, don't believe me. Now we're going to talk about the process, okay? So every acquisition goes through a similar process. And we're going to talk about the process so that you can get the timing right. So first, there's somebody that in a program office or a mission department in some agency has a need either for a product or a service. So why do they need that product or service? What is the objective that that product or service is going to deliver? What is the world going to look like after they have purchased that product or service? Okay, so they've defined that they have a need. They've defined what they're going to use that need for and what the end result they're going to receive from issuing a contract to meet that need. So they know what they want. Now they go out to the market and they do market research. And, the first thing they do, I have to tell you, is they Google, just like we all do. They'll Google. Some of the more sophisticated ones will go to LinkedIn, okay? And they may issue something called a sources sought or a request for information. And, there's two schools of thought about those, whether they're useful or not. But if you have the time, I say always respond to them. But once they get the market research, well, then they're going to finalize how they're going to describe the requirement and what type of contract they're going to issue. Is the solicitation going to be a request for quote, a request for proposal, or is it going to be a task order issued against either a BPA or some sort of an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, or against a multiple award contract, or against a GSA federal supply schedule? Now, how do they make that decision? In large part comes because of what they learn in market research about who are the potential vendors that could help them solve this challenge. But by the time they get down to the second row, okay, if you haven't talked to them by this time, you're not going to talk to them, because there is a rule in the FAR and the regulations that say once a solicitation is issued, that all communications must go only to the contracting officer or his or her designated representative, and those communications will always be in writing. So that doesn't facilitate any type of real knowledge gathering. So if you don't get involved in the market research stage as they're finalizing the requirement, you're going to pretty much be cut off from having anyone talk to the contracting officer. And if you've ever talked to a contracting officer, you're going to get yes and no responses, most likely. There are a few that really want to be helpful, but for the most part, they see their job as not dealing with vendors until a contract is awarded or until proposals are received. So again, it's about the rules, it's about the process, it's about timing. Now, Yasmin, do we have any questions?
No, not as yet. I'd just like to welcome everybody who's joined us since we started, and to remind you that you can type out your questions for Carla in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. All right, so how do you get the timing right? How do you know what the government's going to buy? Again, as I said in my opening remarks, there is a ton of publicly available data about how the government spends their contract dollars. There is sam.gov on the contract award data, has a whole search engine that is really cumbersome and hard to use, but you can get just about any data set out of there that you need to get out of there. My personal favorite that's free is USA Spending because it's a little more user friendly, but that's where you start the research. Now, the government determines what is a small business set aside based on something called a NAICS code, North American Industry Classification System, which is really a system that was designed to track statistical data and market trends about the economy. There's another system that the government doesn't really talk about because they don't track things by this per se, even though they do, it's not their major focus, and it's called the Product Service Code. And those product service codes describe what is being purchased. The NAICS code describes what industry it is being purchased out of, okay? So when you're researching who buys your product or service, Google product service codes, you get a whole manual about what they are, and you can search by code, product service code, by location, by agency, whatever. But the first thing is to figure out who buys your product or service, and to do that best, use a combination of keyword search and a combination of product service codes. And you see what the data shows you. And you'll look at that list and you'll say, my sister-in-law works at Department of State. I wonder who she knows in procurement there, or who she knows in the CIO's office, because I'd like to talk to them about my solution. And you can select target agencies based on geography. You can select target agencies based on the fact that you're a subcontractor at that particular agency, okay? But once you select the agency, then you have to do a little more research by looking at strategic plans. And there's also in that same data set, every contract number identifies the location of where the contract was purchased. So you can go in and identify who in those target agencies, by office, not by name generally, needs your solution, and you can figure out what your pitch to them should be based on the job they have and what the mission that the mission that's associated with that job, okay? And that leads you to developing a message that will get their attention, okay? Your pitch has to show them that you understand what their problem is, you figured out how to solve it, and this is how you're going to help them. To do that, you also would have to study the organization of the target agency. So you can find a lot by going through our agency org charts. You can at least oftentimes identify the office, the bureau, the division that might be purchasing your product or service. And at that point in time, it's simply a matter of reaching out and making contact, okay? Now, I say simply, nothing simple about it, but see all the steps that go into this before you're actually going to reach out and start talking to anybody. That's the very last thing that you do. Now, when you reach out, your goal is to just establish a communication channel with somebody in that agency and convince them that you are worthy of them paying attention to what you're saying, and of them using their connections to introduce you to other humans within that agency that can provide you information about the challenges that you seek to solve. Now, generally, people start with these 4 channels, okay? The small business office is probably the most obvious one. I will tell you that not all small business offices are the same, and not all small business offices are particularly helpful. The goal of the small business office is technically to make sure that the agency meets their presidentially established goals for subcontracting to small businesses and socioeconomically disadvantaged businesses. Some take that mission to mean that to help my agency, I have to help small businesses figure out how to do business with my agency. Some take the perspective that I'm here to help the agency. It's not my job to teach you how to sell to the government. So they're not all created equally, but if you approach them correctly, you can get useful information from them regardless of what their philosophy is. I have several friends, and I used to actually teach for DAU, the small business professional classes. And the biggest pet peeve they have, and I am evangelizing for this, and so are several of my other consultant peers. Their biggest pet peeve is when somebody comes into their office and says, "Hi, my name's Carla. I'm a women-owned, socially disadvantaged, hub zone, SDVOS contractor, and I provide services." Okay, how does that help anybody? Again, do your research. How are you going to help them? Okay, why do you think that they're a good connection for you? Why are you reaching out to them? Why are you interested in that agency? Better yet, look at the agency forecast of opportunities. There's one published at acquisition.gov. You can go to acquisition.gov, scroll down, find the forecast, agency forecast, and they're listed by agency. And you can go look at those forecasts of opportunities and see the types of things that they're forecasting to buy in the next year or so. Now, just like small business offices, all forecasts are not created equally. Some are more useful than others. There are some agencies that haven't put out a forecast for years, okay? That kind of gives you an indication. If the forecast is from 2017, this probably isn't a small business office that's going to be much of an advocate for me, but don't ignore them, because you might be able to convince them to take you in to meet someone if you go with your pitch prepared that shows how you could help their organization deliver its mission on behalf of the government. Now, the program office. A few minutes ago, I said you need to study the agency's organizational chart to see which program office, which division, which location is most likely going to be in charge of buying whatever it is that you are selling. So you'll want to study that organizational chart, and you will want to, see who's in charge, and then you'll want to Google them and see if any other names come up, and you might just start calling. But sometimes you can get the right person in the program office by looking at the org chart. And again, these people are just like the contracting professionals, but they are really the ones that you want to talk to. Why are they the ones that you're really aiming to talk to? Because they're the ones that have the need. Okay, while the contracting officer issues the contract and signs it, they rarely make the decision unless it's a routine type of supply buy about who's going to get the award. There's usually some sort of technical analysis that goes into providing a service to the government. And those are the people that are going to be looking at those proposals. Those are the people that really understand why they need a contractor and what they want the contractor to do. Those are the people that you need to make, know, like, and trust you. Not that they're going to do anything inappropriate, because they're not. But again, these decisions are very personal. The government likes to say, oh no, everything's done objectively, but you know yourself that you make decisions based on an impression, based on how you feel, based on what you read about a product, how it makes you feel. Why do some people buy Teslas and some people buy Fords? Okay, some of it's economy, but some of it is also, I feel great when I'm driving this Tesla, or I don't want to be, I don't like all the showiness of a Tesla, so I'm more of a Ford girl. It's all about how that product, their marketing, makes you feel. And that contributes to the decision. The government doesn't like to admit that, but that is very true, that they too make decisions based on human factors. So 2 reasons you really want to focus on getting into the program offices, because number one, you want them to know who you are. You want them to at least know you and maybe even like you, maybe be on the road to trusting what you have to say. And because they're the ones that really understand what the need is. They understand what it is that they need the contractor to do and how it affects their mission, how it impacts their day-to-day life. They can give you the real information you need so that when it comes time to write a proposal, you actually have a good chance of writing a proposal that is aligned with the needs of the end user. Now, another way to make contact, we all know other small businesses who work together. We partner, we subcontract, we team, we enter into joint ventures. So those people, hopefully you have a good relationship with them. Who do they know in the agency that you need to make contact in? Are they willing to introduce you to their contacts? Even if they don't work in the same functional area that you do, and they know they have a customer at that agency, maybe that customer maybe they can get a name for you. Maybe they can introduce you to that customer, and that customer can introduce you to somebody in the government. If nothing else, it's better to say that you know X, Y, and Z when you reach out by email, and say that you are, and introduce yourself. You can say that I know so-and-so, or so-and-so told me this about you. They're like, oh, they know somebody that I know. It's all about connections, all about connections. And then the last on the list is the contracts office. Contracting officer is really the decision maker, as I said a couple minutes ago, but they can hurt you. Okay, so if you don't do your due diligence and at least pay homage to them, they can hurt your chances. So you can't ignore the contracting officer, because depending on the structure of the agency, they may be involved in any meetings that the program office has. Okay. And if they are involved in those meetings, well, you can't ignore them. I have had a client recently that didn't want to deal with the contracting office, and they were totally rude to the contracting officer, who was really trying to facilitate a meeting between this client and the end user. Needless to say, I don't work with that client anymore, but also needless to say, they never got that meeting that they were really wanting and desperately needing. So yes, the contracting officer is not the end user, but they can hurt you and they can help you. So when you go to the small business office, okay, what are they looking for? So here's some examples of what small businesses are. Now, Department of State has a real good small business office, and they have industry liaison officers that actually meet with people and that actually come out and talk to industry about what it is that the small business needs. So this is their mission statement, okay? Now, contrast that with the Department of State, okay? Mission is to ensure small business policies and the goals of the Secretary of Transportation are implemented in a fair, efficient, and effective manner. Okay, they have a mission statement. So go to the website. Here's Department of Justice. That's even a more committed mission statement. But you can start to see the difference between these departments. They're all Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, but they all have different missions, and they all talk about their mission in different ways. Department of Defense, the biggest buyer, the smallest mission with respect to small business. I don't know what that says, but it definitely says something. Now, how do you find out what these agencies are buying? The simplest way to start is to look at these procurement forecasts. Now, the procurement forecasts are published, as I said, on acquisition.gov. And when you click on acquisition.gov, you'll get a listing of all the procurement forecasts, and you can click. Some of them are real nice, and you can search by NAICS code or PSC code, and some of them are simply Excel spreadsheets. But on that agency forecast, you're looking to see, are they going to buy what I'm selling? How did they buy it the last, when are they planning to buy it? Is there a point of contact? Sometimes within those agency forecasts, you'll actually see a point of contact. Somebody's name will actually be listed in an email. So these can be very valuable. But once you find something on a forecast or through doing your data analysis from either SAM.gov contract award database, or from USA Spending, or from GovTribe or GovWin or Federal Compass, or all these, or Public Spend Forum, all these different data aggregators that sell the data, you got to research the agency. So oftentimes the forecast can help you do that, okay? Sometimes not. Now, sometimes a large prime contractor is your best way into an agency. Who do you know at a large business is doing business at this agency? If something's not small business set aside, what do you bring to the team? How do you approach a large prime contractor? I'm doing a series right now because especially with category management, a lot of small businesses are finding it increasingly difficult to do business with the government because of these big GWACs and multiple award contracts like GSA 8A stars and Alliant, Oasis, Soup. So teaming is becoming more necessary. So I'm doing a whole series on how to reach out to prime contractors, and sales is sales. It's basically the same thing. Before reaching out, why do they need what I'm selling? Do they even need what I'm selling? Okay. How have they used it in the past? Who have they contracted with in the past? Just like you do with the government, it's the same process. It's the same process. So emails, okay? Now you're going to have to do emails. You're going to have to do cold calls. Nobody likes to do cold calls, but that's what you have to do. Now you've got a few months here. This is the end of May. So you've got the whole month of June before the Q4 buying frenzy begins. This is the time to be dialing for dollars and typing for transactions is what I call it. Type your email to find out about a transaction you might be able to participate in and dial for dollars, okay? So you only get one shot to make a first impression, so make sure it's a good impression. They don't care about you until you show them how you can help them with some challenge that they have. And if you can't differentiate yourself, then they're always going to award on price. If they don't need what you sell, you're wasting your time. So you've really got to, if you're like most small businesses, you don't have a big staff. You really, really, really have to focus on who is your best target. And again, that's something that you do by reviewing the data and looking critically and honestly at what it is that you sell and what is the real value associated with what you sell that your customers benefit from. Now, you also need to tell them the government is huge on past performance. So of course you have to write about that in your proposal, but I find it never hurts to put something in my email, or if I'm leaving a voicemail, which is what you do most of the time when you cold call, talking about how I've helped other people like them and the outcome that they got from working for me in a couple of sentences, okay? You don't want to go into long detail because number one, in an email, nobody's going to read all that unless you really have encapsulated why they must talk to you. And on a phone message, it'll beep before you're done. Now, why would you do why your process is better than other similar organizations? And what about a capability statement? It's required. Everybody says, send me your capability statement. That's basically like, I just want to get you off the phone, or I just feel I have to answer this email, but I'm not really going to engage with you. So how do you flip that around? By tailoring your capability statement. Okay, everybody says you need a capability statement, a generic one. And I think there's nothing at all wrong with having a generic capability statement on your website. But you need to build on that and have other tailored capability statements that address the specific pain or problem that you are trying to solve for the person that you're trying to get the meeting with. Okay, so yes, they're going to ask for a capability statement. You're going to have one ready. Okay, so have it ready. But know that if you're actually going to get their attention, it needs to be tailored so that it resonates with the need that they have. Said this earlier, I say it again because, as I said, I'm really evangelizing on this. Your size doesn't make you special. It doesn't make you special. That we all know that the government has requirements to subcontract to small businesses and to socioeconomically disadvantaged businesses. We all also know that large primes typically have subcontracting plans that they're required to submit and get approved, and that they are measured on as part of their CPARs, okay? So everybody knows that. So size isn't what makes you special, because guess what? You will differentiate yourself if in fact you come to the meeting or you leave a voicemail, you write an email introducing yourself, and that fact that you're small, you're SDVOSB is kind of an afterthought. Now, I will say that if you're doing business with the VA, it's good to make sure that they know that you're an SDVOSB or a VOSB, because they are limited in whom they can contract with. They have to do a lot of rules and a lot of justifications if they're not going to award to some sort of a veteran-owned entity. But again, that should not be what you lead with. And just ask for 10 minutes of their time. And if they say yes, then you have to prepare for that meeting, okay? So be a person of your word, have a concise pitch about why you're of value to them. How are you going to figure that out? Research, okay? So what is your value? Is it that you offer a new way to solve a problem? You offer a better widget? Is it that you really deeply understand the challenge because you have some knowledge about either the agency or about the particular area of expertise that you bring to the table? And always, always, always demonstrate to them that you understand what their mission is, okay? That gets their attention. Ask questions about their mission, okay? The goal is to get to the next meeting. Getting the initial meeting sometimes is much easier than getting the next meeting, okay? So your goal is to get them interested enough that they say, well, when can we talk about this further? Or they say, you know, I like what I've heard today, and I want to get another time with you to introduce you to my boss or to my colleague. Or it might even be, you know, I can't help you, but I do have a friend or a colleague in this agency that might help you. Or I have a friend or a colleague over at XYZ agency who has been looking just for that. Let me introduce you, okay? You wanna be a person of your word and keep it to no more than 10 minutes. And ideally, you wanna keep it to 5 minutes so that you can listen to what they have to say. Communicating is a lot about listening, okay? You're going in there, you've done your research, so you have some background knowledge, but you don't really know the context around that knowledge. The person that you're talking to does. Every meeting should take you further down the path of understanding why you're a good fit for this customer, this prospect, or why you're not, so that you can move on and use your bid and proposal dollars on something that has a better probability for you. Okay, still no questions? Okay,
No, we've got a quiet crowd in today.
I'm saying, okay, all right. So as I said a minute ago, you want to listen more than you talk. Okay. Find out what their current needs are and if they know what their upcoming needs will be. Try to find out what contract vehicle they prefer to use to make their awards. A lot of this information you can glean from some of the paid services will actually analyze that for you and tell you how often a particular agency or a particular bureau buys using SAM, or whether they prefer the federal supply schedule, whether they prefer OASIS or, you know, NetSense or some other contract. But you want to know what their preferences are, both with the socioeconomic programs. Are they heavy on, you know, women-owned small business because they haven't met that goal? Most agencies don't meet their hub zone goal. So, you know, that's something you might want to listen for. And you're also going to listen for commonalities, that human to human connection, okay? Maybe you both grew up in California. Maybe you both went to the University of Michigan. Maybe your kids both love to play lacrosse, okay? But the goal is, if you got that 10 minutes, you want to get your pitch out, and then you know, why you think you're a good fit. I know this is your challenge. This is how I solve it. This is where I've solved it for other people. Now, tell me, is there anything else I need to know? How else can I help you? It's about making that connection. And then ask them for recommendations and advice. People love to give their opinion. People love to tell you what they think you should do. Now you have to take that recommendation and that piece of advice with a grain of salt, always, because they think they know your situation. They may or they may not. But people love to help. So give them the opportunity to do so. That makes you memorable, okay? Remember, you're there to sell, but you're also there, more importantly, to build a relationship that hopefully will pay dividends for years to come. So once you got the meeting, you're going to follow up, okay? And you're going to send a thank you. I appreciate our time together. Reference something that you all talked about, or that personal connection that you made. If there were any next steps that you agreed on or that were hinted at, summarize what they are. And then don't just go away and forget. Figure out what your follow-up system is going to be. You're not going to make contact on the first call. Very rarely will you make contact with the right person on the first call, if you even get anybody to talk to you. Very rarely are you going to get response to your first email. Sometimes you will, sometimes you don't, okay? So there's statistics that say it takes anywhere between 7 and 19 touches for somebody to actually pay attention to you. So what are those touches? Well, there's LinkedIn, okay? There's sending generic communications. There's sending them a little note if you saw something that reminded you of something that you all discussed in your human-to-human interaction, okay? Maybe you got a new contract award and you're excited about it and you want them to know about that award, okay? Maybe they told you about a situation that they were encountering, or that was coming up, or a challenge that they were facing, and you happen to meet at a networking event. a small business that you think might be able to help them. Okay. Interesting news about your area of expertise, because you always want to be seen as a resource, not only as a resource to provide services or products, but as just a generic resource, a good person to know. This business is long, it is cyclical. The people that you meet today, you'll still know probably 5 to 10 years from now, because once people get in this business, they tend to stick with it. Okay. All right. So when you get in the program office, okay, why do I say the program office is the most important? So went over this a few minutes, but this bears repeating. So the program office has a mission that they have to deliver. Contracts has a mission too, but their mission is to award contracts, administer contracts, make sure contractors get paid. They may contract out for some of those services, but for the most part, they don't have a mission and they don't have a budget to buy outside support to meet their mission. Okay. So the program office is the person who really has the goal. They have the requirement, and they have a huge role in deciding who wins, who gets invited to the meeting after they've submitted and reviewed RFIs. They're the end user. They're the ones who have the problem that you're trying to solve. They're the ones that you want to know, like, and trust you. Okay. They are really the most important. Those are some of the most important relationships that you can have. And once you, and those relationships will take you far, because people change jobs often. So the person that's at Treasury today might be at Department of State tomorrow, might be at Department of Defense next year. So you're broadening your reach. So again, how do you find these program officers? Well, I touched on this a little bit. Research is key. Ask what we call competimates, people that are, they're competitors, but you team with them sometime. Maybe you have employees who used to work at this agency who might know somebody. Maybe you have strategic partnerships. Maybe you have a mentor. But ask people, who do you know at XYZ agency? Now, there's a whole lot of information that's available publicly, okay? There are the funding codes on SAM. You can look those up and see where they are. There's a whole directory of they call them DODAC numbers. I forget what it stands for, but there's a directory of DODAC numbers that will tell you where the funding came from, okay? Look at agency organizational charts. Look at agency budgets, and we already talked about forecasts. Now, here's something else you can do. You can do a Freedom of Information Act request for the current contract if what you are targeting is a repetitive repeat requirement, okay? So you can submit a Freedom of Information Act request asking for the contract and all modifications. Now, this generally takes some time, and a lot of it's been digitized. So you might even just go out to the agency that you're marketing to their Freedom of Information Act reading room, and see if the contract that you're looking for is out there. Okay. Now you'll need the contract number. And again, how do you find that? You go back into the award data on SAM. Okay. A lot of this information is public. We are awash in data. We don't necessarily use the data, but the data is there if you take the time to look, and if you understand what each of those data elements means. Now, freedom of information takes time to process. So it's not, like you're going to call it today and get it tomorrow. And it's not free. They do charge you for research time. Okay. Now, targeted email. Mention a common connection, an association. We both belong to the National Contract Management Association, or the Association of Scientific Engineers, or the Cybersecurity Technology Association of Maryland, whatever the case may be. A targeted email. So you're going to say, I'd like to follow up with you in a phone call. Okay, I'll be leaving you a voicemail message as well. Then you leave a voicemail message. And if you actually get the phone call, give your 60-second elevator pitch and then let them talk. Okay. And if you get a hold of somebody in the program office, you've got to figure out how to keep that connection going. Okay. You've got to be open to people reaching out to you as well. So thank them for their time, schedule the next activity, and then you put them in that follow-up loop. Okay. So again, same process. Okay. When you get in the meeting, okay, you're going to let them talk more than you talk. Because remember, you've gotten your value pitch, your elevator speech. down to under 5 minutes, right? So then you're going to let them talk about what their challenges and needs are. Who is the beneficiary of the what they do for the agency? How are the challenges that they're facing impacting their mission and their life? How would their life and their agency look if those challenges went away? Who do they do business with? The goal is to look for opportunities to demonstrate that you can help them, because people are looking for quick wins. Again, ask about upcoming needs and the priority of those needs, and get contact information for everybody that you meet so that you can put them on some sort of, tickler system that you have. Maybe it's in your CRM system that you follow up once a month. You do a quick email. Hey, how are you? I saw that we're having a meeting for the association we belong to. I'm going, are you? All of that, gather all the contact information. And the thing is, once you get a contact, don't let it go cold, okay? Again, the follow-up. Thank you for the meeting. Provide information that's useful. Remember, you are selling, but you don't want them to see you as a salesperson. You want them to see you as a resource, okay? And refer to things that you heard by listening to what they said. That's how you do that. And if you have a potential idea to solve a problem or somebody you want to introduce them to, go for it. And you suggest the next steps, and it's okay to reach out multiple times. There have been studies done in the last couple of years that decision makers expect to hear from potential suppliers multiple times, and it's okay with them. And decision makers will take cold meetings if the person can tell them in their initial contact why it's worth their 10 minutes to take time to talk to this person. So again, it's about research, and that's been proven by numerous studies. So this thing of following up, okay? Based on your interests, based on projects that you're looking for, based on work that you think you can do, or companies you can introduce them to. This is what I refer to as a drip campaign, because whether you use a CRM or whether you put it on your calendar, you want to follow up, consistently. Now, after you have your initial meeting, statistics show that you want to follow up 3 days after that meeting. First you do the thank you note the same day, then you want to follow up 3 days later. If you don't hear anything, then you want to follow up in 2 weeks. And whether you hear anything or not, you want to stay in that person's inbox at least once a month, not spamming them, but sending them something that's of value, okay? And in addition to that regular schedule, if there's something new and relevant that comes up, tell them, okay? So what a lot of people do, and what I recommend a lot of people do, is come up with a monthly personal email. And I wouldn't recommend you use something like I use Constant Contact, but I don't market to the government anymore. But what I recommend you do is that you do the email merge on Outlook, okay? Because that is less likely. I won't say that it will not get caught in their spam filters, or that it won't get quarantined until they investigate it, but it's less likely for that to happen than if you use one of those services like Constant Contact or Emma, or there's a ton of them. But if you use those services, those get snagged almost right away, and they rarely get to their target. Okay, hold on. So here's a question. Do you find digital marketing strategies work for government for example, I found that sending our e-newsletter results in a lot of hard bounces or undeliverable status to government customers. Yep, it's due to the spam blockers and quarantine. We are a small business with limited BD resources. It's you. Oh, congratulations, Laura. Should I focus on one-to-one rather than generic communications when I'm prioritizing my activities? This is the problem I was just talking about. So you can see if it works to do the mail merge through Microsoft Outlook, okay? But the one-to-one, but make it, the reason you do the mail merge is because it looks like it's personalized. Now, sometimes those get snagged, but they get snagged less often. Digital marketing strategies do work, okay? But it's not necessarily only emails. So for a digital marketing strategy to work, you actually have to have your website optimized so that they can find you. You need to be on LinkedIn. If you're not already, follow somebody by the name of Mark Amtower. Here, I'll type that in chat. He tracks how many government people and what they do, and their role that they have within their government agency are on LinkedIn. Last time, I think, if I'm remembering right, I know this sounds crazy, but I think there were 2 million either contracting officers or program officers that were on LinkedIn. Now, my contacts in government tell me that they don't post a lot. Some of them do, but the majority of them don't post a lot. So you think they're not there, but they are there. Okay. They're looking, they're lurking, they're like digital stalkers. Okay. So use LinkedIn. That's a great one. And again, you've got to maybe do some, I don't know what your budget is, but maybe do some strategic ads, either Google ads or LinkedIn ads. But the important thing is to make sure that your website is optimized, because the first thing they do when they're looking for people is to Google them. And by all means, do not give up on your marketing strategies. Okay. I'm going to be having, I don't know if it's going to be in July or in August, but stay tuned, because I'm having an event with a company that does just that, digital marketing strategies for GovCons. And we're putting together this like little, I do the piece about, what's your message and how to find the data, what to put in the message so that the government will respond. And she tells you how to use the digital tools. Okay. So stay tuned. That's going to be coming up, and that's going to help a lot of people, because if you can really leverage those digital tools, it saves you a lot of time. Okay. And you're welcome. Great question. Okay. So how do you leverage your small business partners? So remember, you can have these partnerships with people. I'm working with a company now out in New York, and they're a woman-owned small business, and they have partners, and they both decide to respond to sources SOTs and RFIs with their full capabilities, because their goal is to get something set aside for a woman-owned small business, and then they plan to team. So there's lots of ways that you can work with smalls, and they, my client is deep in the FBI, their partner is deep in DHS. So, they're doing these introductions back and forth between each other. It's working out really well for them. So they've got this referral partnership going, and they've got this partnership going where they both respond to sources sought, so that the government knows that there's the likelihood that one or more. So if you get 2 or 3 to respond to a sources sought or an RFI, you have a better chance of getting it set aside for that socioeconomic category. Can't guarantee they'll actually do it, right? But you certainly improve your chances if in fact you actually respond as part of a strategy, an overarching strategy. Now, other smalls work in other agencies. So these partners that you have that you team with, or partners that you, if you're on a JV or a team for like one of these big GWACs or multiple award contracts, they work in different agencies than you most likely. So, what do you ask them for? I'm trying to get work, John, at XYZ agency, and I know you do work there. Now, I'm not trying to step on your toes, and we have a non-compete agreement in place, but this work is not the same work that you do, and I'm interested if you would be willing to introduce me to any program officers or contracting professionals that at that agency that you think can be beneficial. Okay. Now, the other thing you can ask them for is introductions. You can ask them if they know who at this agency does this. Okay. Ask them what it's like to work for the agency. What are the things that people with that agency that are at that agency have been struggling with and that they haven't been able to solve? Okay. I'm trying to get in this agency in this particular area. Who's likely to be my competition? These are how you use and leverage your small business partners. Okay. And just some ideas. Now, contract offices, they are much easier to find. They are harder to reach, and they work really hard at keeping you at an arm's length. They can stop a contract. They can also be your ally. So how to make them an ally? Help them with their market research, respect their time. Let them know that you get it, that they're so overworked, because they are, okay? And, provide their community assistance. I have a good friend who is very active in NCMA, and she has built her whole business by participating in NCMA events, okay? So that's one way that you can make them your ally, because then if they know you and trust you, then they'll tell you, we've got a requirement coming up that I think I want to introduce you to the program office before it gets too far down the path, because you might be able to help us with that. She's built a thriving business for her company just by sponsoring NCMA events. Talked a little bit about LinkedIn. A lot of people don't realize how powerful it is, but it should be a daily commitment. then this is what that commitment is. Scroll through and comment. Figure out what groups are government centric, what groups where you can find potential partners. Look at make recommendations, give people kudos for good jobs done, give referrals, make connections, message anybody who connects with you, strive to message them and schedule a short one-to-one, even if it's virtual or on the phone, okay? But to use LinkedIn effectively, you need to be on there daily because, and the thing is, don't link out to articles. Right now, LinkedIn likes those long posts because it keeps people on their site longer, which means they can sell more advertising. So they don't have any limit to how much you can put in your post. So, you know, if you're going to link out, put it in the comments, because posts that link out to your blog, for example, don't come up as frequently. Now they'll change that algorithm at some point, but that's the way it is now. So what do you do on LinkedIn? What types of things do you share? Your goal is to educate and inform, to promote good content, even if it comes from another source. I have people that I respect that do similar things to me, and I promote their content. I really do, okay? Even though in some instances we're competitors, that's okay. My goal is to be known as a resource so that people, when they have issues with doing government contracting, they'll think, I heard of this woman, Carla, okay, let me call her. And, you know, sometimes be a little entertaining, tell a joke or two, share something about a charity. But one thing, don't overshare about your personal life, and never talk politics or religion on LinkedIn. A few people do it. It's a mistake. It's definitely a mistake. So I've given you some ideas. I'm running close to my time. Like I said, this is one of my favorite topics, okay? So how do you get started? Just a few things in closing. Who do you know at agencies in each of these 4 places to make contact? Who do you know in the small business office? Who do you know in contracting program office? Do you know other on-site managers that work at the agency that you want to target? Do you know other companies that work there? What about your former employees or your former employers, professional colleagues, networking associates, okay? Your goal is to find names so you can reach out and make meaningful contacts, okay? Ask for introductions, ask for suggestions. Offer to make introductions. Sometimes you have to give first before you receive. Be generous in giving referrals and be generous with the information that you have, okay? Now, as I said a little while ago, this is prime time because right now the government is finalizing their acquisition plans, getting approvals, fine-tuning the solicitation. There'll be some industry days. You're going to see more solicitations start to come out now because fourth quarter is just around the corner, okay? But so now's the time to really start making those calls, making those emails, but you have to be strategic about it because your goal is to get results. It's all about timing. So your window of opportunity is coming to a close to actually get in front of somebody in many instances, not all, but probably by July 15th, August 1st, you're gonna not be able to talk to program offices and maybe not even contracting offices. So this is prime time. And decision makers expect you to call more than once. Top salespeople want you to contact them by phone, even though they don't answer the phone. But the senior decision makers, believe it or not, don't like the phone. Okay, they want to be contacted by email. So work on your email game. And if you email me at Carla@GovCon Academy, I've got some sample emails to get your juices going. Hold on, let me see if I can, where's chat? There we go. So if you email that and put in the subject line, email templates, I'll send that out to you, okay? There you go. All right. Okay, so we're right at the end. So, you know, if you do all of this, and it will take you some time, I went back here because I forgot to mention that emails are more effective than phone calls because nobody answers their phone. I don't answer my phone unless I know the person. Figure if it's important, they'll leave a message. And expect to reach out up to 20 times before you get their attention. This will be hard, but eventually, one by one, you'll bring your prospects out of hiding, okay? So I'm right at 11 o'clock. Oops, I'm a minute over, wow. Okay, so there's my, there's my contact information. I reach out for the email templates, put email templates in the subject line so that I know what it's for. I'm gonna start having monthly free strategy sessions, and I have my next my masterclass, which launches next month. So reach out to me if you're interested in all of that. Yasmin, thank you. And I feel like I'm running out of breath. Thank you all
Thank
for your
you.
attention.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, Carla. That was very, very useful. This topic is something we get a lot of questions about from our clients. So I'm pleased that we were able to get you to do it today and take advantage of what Carla has to offer. She's always sending out great free information. And then obviously, if you want to pay to do any of her classes or use her resources, you know that is a trusted resource. So thank you, Carla, for a wonderful
Thank you for having
presentation.
me.
And thank
for
you
having me.
everybody for participating today. And don't forget to contact your PTAC counselor for counseling. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.